Time to play the game. What have I forgotten this time? Hello. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pennard. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy author, and you're on Booktube. So happy to have you this morning or afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world. I am an author, but I'm also an eclectic reader. So here are some books of mine behind me. But today I'm going to be talking about books I want to read and books that I recommend, because while it is still February and the Black Author Tuber Readathon is going on, and I will share my current reads at the end of this, I am preparing for next month, March, which has one of my favorite readathons of the year, the Irish Readathon. And I participate in this every year that it's on, I believe, since I've been on Booktube. It's run by Aoife at Words of Clover and Leanne Rose. Leanne Rose is the channel, and those links are down in the description. If you are curious, they both have announcement links, and Aoife's has the prompts in the description, so it's easier to find them. I have written down the prompts here in the planner, and then I went to look for all the Irish books that I might have on my unread list, my TBR, my shelves. And then I went looking for like Irish author lists, because sometimes authors are Irish without my knowing. And that happened to one author that is on my list to read that I have multiple books of. So I was happy about that, and hopefully I will read one of their books. But yes. So welcome, everybody. I'm going to take you through with banners so that it's a little less chaos. I will say my Irish reads this year have also ventured into research reads for my books, which is great. And yeah, I'm just very interested in the history, and I have Irish heritage. So yeah, it's just a lovely thing every year, and I get very excited about it. And we'll go into some of the variety in my stacks in just a moment. But I wanted to say hello to the chat. Remember to hit the like button. Hello, Elaine. Welcome. Julie is here. Good morning. Yes, been looking forward to it. Elaine is listening as she works on her book list, currently up to 1,046. I may have a few books. And that reminded me, there's a tag going around that I have on my list that is called unread books. And for it, you have to count how many unread books you have. So I've been putting that one off because that's quite a task. Hi, Eva. Haven't seen Eva in a while. Nice to see you, friend. I like this sort of list. How close to complete is the list? Yeah, it's hard to count all those books. That is why I have a spreadsheet, says Elaine, going through books and sheets and adding what I missed. Yeah, I can't update the spreadsheet often enough to keep up with the shelves. I just can't. Hello, Gareth. Hope everyone is okay. Yes, it is fine and dandy here. I am, dressing up for the cold, even with the heater on. But what did I look up? Oh, yes, it's right. Ploutry. Rain that falls in a kind of lazy, half-hearted shower. And the little poem is, if you've holes in your roof and the weather turns ploutry, it hardly matters if you're inside or outery. Just funny. This is my little book of Scottish rain. It is raining again. It is also pretty cold. It's hovering around freezing here. So I am staying warm and snug inside. Oh, I skipped down a comment. Eva says, love it so much. I want to do a spreadsheet of my books. The weather is so nice today. My library is in the cold part of the house. There's another good excuse. Mike is here from RAFFERTY. I'm on time. Up the Irish. Well done. Elaine, glad she started years ago. Yeah, the book audit. That's a tricky thing. I try to use Goodreads or Storygraph and something that scans because it's so much work, but then they wouldn't have my books. Yeah, and we're going to get into that because I use Bookshop to recommend books to people. I'm not sure people use those links anymore, but sometimes books are not available on bookshop.org, and I have to find other ways. eBay, I guess, is a good way to look them up. Pango. Yeah. 70 degrees. Unseasonably warm. Okay, well, not here. So, let's see. We're going to start with the easily accessible bookshop.org books. So these are my top recommendations read in previous years. Oh, wait. There we go. Sorry. And they are available on bookshop.org. So I've got this one. Welcome to the live stream. And let's jump into the top recommendations. See, it's definitely a case of what am I going to forget today? Let's see. The first one is yeah, there we go. And I will say they change, Leanne and Aoife change their prompts each year. Last year it was pick of all the previous year's prompts, which is a little chaotic for me to collect. But this year it's back down to 5, which is pretty easy. And so here are the top recommendations available on Bookshop. And you will see, like I said, there's a wide variety. And how I would describe this is some were not for me, not these here on the page. Some stretched my brain, and these are some on the page, and some landed perfectly. So I'm going to explain a little bit about each one to see if you might be interested and I can expand your TBR. So let me make sure you can see it. Yes. Okay. So the first one is what I read last year, The Rachel Incident by Carolyn O'Donoghue. This is a modern book. I think in the vein of Sally Rooney, but I haven't read Sally Rooney. Basically, it's like messy, chaotic, uh, Gen Z, I guess. Maybe millennial person in Ireland, working a job, going back to school, having family issues, trying to get their life together and have friends and a living situation and not make the same mistakes in relationships that they've done before, although they do get very entangled. And so we follow Rachel. Yeah. And yeah, it's one of these kind of reminds me of a Judy Blume book because someone in their life thinks that there's so much drama and so much high stakes, and really, like, in another phase of their life, they will look back and go, wow, I really had a lot of things going for me, you know? So I like the tone. I like the setting. I like the knowledge of Dublin, Cork, London that she throws in at different settings. I think it's a very well done novel. And it's contemporary, which I don't normally read. So good recommendation for the readathon. Then we've got Tree Dogs. So this is a book by Margaret Magan, who is a polymath, let's say, but he wrote a book called 32 Words for Field, and I couldn't get that here in the US, but I could get this one in my library, Tree Dogs, Banshee Fingers, and Other Irish Words for Nature. So not unlike Robert Macfarlane, who is a favorite author of mine, Margaret Magan is someone who is very interested in old languages, old words, how they relate to culture, how they preserve something that is not normally appreciated in our modern hustle culture. And so he has illustrations. I think Steve Dugan, if I'm reading that right, is the illustrator. And I just love like learning a little bit of the Irish language, which I don't know much of. I did attempt to learn some in like high school, I think, but my recent studies have been Scots Gaelic, and that's related but different vocabulary. So yeah, Tree Dogs, and that was interesting. It's more like a children's book, but 32 Words for Field is the other book that I would recommend if you have access to it. Then we have A Ghost in the Throat by Doreen Negrifa. And this is another modern book and very literary fiction, but it focuses on the author's search for the backstory to a historical figure. So I wouldn't say it's dual timeline necessarily because it feels like she's entering into this altered state to imagine the past, but it's about how her life feels like it's falling apart. There's lots of grief. And in order to assuage that, she's clinging to this search for like a feminist source for her cultural longings, it feels like. So she researches this woman who is in the background of a famous tale, and it's about her academic search. It's about her feeling unqualified. It's about her, imagining this woman's story in the 16th century or 17th century. And a lot of it is sharing across languages, across centuries, and having this really longing feeling at the core. So probably there's a significant amount that I didn't understand in the book, but it was so beautifully, charismatically written that it was nice to even observe. And again, a stretch for me because it's modern and it's uh, academic, but I really just loved watching it unfurl and being immersed in the language. We've got The Best of Frank O'Connor, which is a book that I read because I wanted to read Guests of the Nation. And I read this as a combination for Modern, March of the Moderns, and Irish Readathon one year, because this is from 1930s, 1920s. Frank O'Connor is not as well known as some of the other big names in Irish literature, but he was a big force, I would say. And a lot of his short stories are memorialized, they were celebrated, but I don't think he's talked about much today. And I think he does really well if you're interested in like war poets. There's a lot of tension around the independence movement and around the violence that was very recently involved in gaining that independence and the relationship with the church and just like people trusting each other. So I really like those themes in the short stories, and again, while I may not have understood all of the context for it, I think, the pieces that I did understand from Irish history were very, um, mordant. Mordant, that's a good word, it means biting, like, really crisp. Like, I think he really does a good job of juxtaposing viewpoints and characters that illustrate the tensions and the issues in society that, were going on then and 100 years later, you know? Okay, let me pause to check the chat and see if you guys have comments. Uh, uh, all right, we love early spring. All right, yes, love it. Elaine is talking about her spreadsheets. Jim is here. Hello, Jim. I don't know if you've put together your pile of possibilities for the Irish Readathon. I'm going over recommendations and then we'll try to assemble a pile of possibilities. Mojo is here. Hello, hello. I was just putting together the thumbnail and I had to find a picture for Monique. And yeah, so I've got that to send out. The panel on fantasy for the Black Author Tuber Readathon will feature Mojo next Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific. If you are available at that time, we'd love to have you. I'm going to remind you at the end, don't worry. Catpaw says, A Ghost in the Throat sounds interesting. I think you would like it. It's, yeah, again, stretched my brain and in a good way. So this was like a little darling a couple years ago and I got sucked in. Books are all over the place. Yep. My friend Malia was calling that Live Life Chaos Muppet this Sunday. And I thought, oh, that's a great word. I'm gonna use that. Jim says, Hamnet is on my TBR shelf. I also picked up Lyrebird by Cecilia Ahern recently. Oh, okay. So I was going to quickly show you guys my Irish Readathon tag. I made it public so you can search it on Storygraph. I've got lots of recommendations, and one of them is from Catpaw, and it's a Cecilia Ahern book, but I haven't been able to find it anywhere. I think I constantly check it and go, wait, what was that book, that Irish one? And I check it in used bookstores, and I haven't been able to find it over here, but one day. Mike says, I've got my Oedipus Complex and Other Stories by Frank O'Connor on my TBR this year list. Oh, nice. That is the grand spreadsheet, right, of all the themes that you did a while ago. Very impressive. Alan, hello. Good evening. Yes. I looked up your email. So what I do with readathons is I send one email with everyone. So I had to get your email and then I'll send all the information at once later today. So yeah, that's how I manage. I can't do things across multiple platforms when I'm trying to manage one live stream. So that's what I do. Julie says, I loved Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt when it was first released. Yeah, but I know the book was criticized as being an exaggerated depiction of Limerick poverty. Was it? I really got into Frank McCourt. My mom really liked Malachi McCourt's book afterwards. We listened to it on audio, and it was lovely hearing him narrate. Um, I don't know that it was an exaggeration, but I guess people who knew might know better. Yeah. Cool idea. Hi, Derek. Hello. All right. So I've got 3 more. I've got 7 that are available on Bookshop. So the last ones are Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. So this is obviously much more well-known nowadays because there's a movie that just came out. Maggie O'Farrell has several books out, and one of them is on my pile of possibilities, but Hamnet is really her breakout success. It's about a imagined version of Shakespeare's family. Hamnet is the name of his son, which is true, and we don't know much about his wife, Anne Hathaway. We have her cottage as a museum, but we don't know much about their life. And so Hamnet examines really Anne's life and the viewpoint of her life in the scenery. So it's very similar to Ghost in the Throat in that way, in that it centers the woman's point of view, and it gets a little mystical, which is also similar. And trigger warning, there are some grief things. The historical fact is that Hamnet dies. So that's a trigger fact. That's also a historical fact. So I just want to let people know that ahead of time. And that is what feeds into supposedly Shakespeare's writing this book about Hamlet and this great tragedy. So that is nothing to do with this story that Maggie O'Farrell tells, and it's a very unique perspective and intimate view of a small family life with difficulties and different personalities in 16th century. So very interesting to look at. Then we've got The Tainted by Kaveri Madhavan. Did I say that right? Madhavan. Yes. Okay. So this book I read 4 years ago now, and I loved it. Okay. So there's dual timeline. It's historical fiction. It's about the British Empire. So already my antennae are twitching. It's about modern day tourists going to India, I believe, and it ends up crossing with another storyline, and the other storyline is from the 1920s when there was an Irish regiment that was stationed in India, and maybe not the 1920s, maybe it was the 19 teens. Anyway, it was during the War for Independence, 1916, Easter Rising, just after 1922 is when they declared independence, and so there's this you're an Irish person in the British Army. It's a lot of the conflicting loyalties, and well, if you don't have another way to make a living, you join the army. Kind of, what do you do to survive? Same kind of tensions in Frank O'Connor's Guests of the Nation story. But this sort of zooms back out and has more of a classic historical fiction following a character that's made up. And it's pretty dramatic. There's some fun reveals and twists and stuff. So it's less emotionally draining and more just like a story to read along. So if you're looking for more of a traditional historical fiction where you learn a little history and you're swept up in the setting and you get to switch back and forth between 2 stories and wonder how they relate, this is a charming and delightful mystery while also having some really good meaty themes. So yeah, really recommend. I really like that one. And then the last one I have here is a nonfiction. Is it the only nonfiction I have on here? Yes. No, Tree Dogs is nonfiction. So yeah, that's because it's just not available. I have a really good nonfiction recommendation not on here. To Speak for the Trees. This is Too many tabs. This is by Diana Beresford Kroger. She is a botanist. So if you want to think about like indigenous biologists in the US who are trying to knit together science and indigenous knowledge, so like Western science and indigenous science, and spirituality, because that's how they look at things, then this is probably on the same wavelength. We have the author talking about her childhood, where she grew up in Ireland as a sort of misfit orphan because her parents, one was Irish, one was English, I believe, and it was upper crust as well. So she had this weird sort of lonely left child in Dublin, and then she was sent off to the middle of the mountains somewhere in Ireland. I can't remember. It's been a while. And she lives with these relatives who live far away from civilization. And they teach her about nature. They teach her about the trees. It's kind of given to us to believe that it's like druidic knowledge, right? It's things that are not written down. It's spiritual beliefs. It's caretaker stewardship beliefs of the land. And I loved it. So she talks about Ogham, as an alphabet and how it's based on trees. And like each of the trees, she talks about different stories. But then she zooms out of her life growing up in Ireland and goes into her career as a scientist, where she went to university in Canada, but also has gone on these tree hunts, these plant hunts to find unique plants that might be used in medicine, because I think her specialty is like biochemical medicine research from plants, which is amazing. So, I mean, she's talking about helicoptering in and looking for certain trees on a random hillside in like South America. I'm not sure of the details of that, but like it was very cool the way she's tying together all these different experiences in her life. And meanwhile, she's got this um, small plot of land in Canada, in Ontario, I think, where she nurses trees and she preserves fruits and talks about how to plant things. And it's just like a little bit of everything that I love. And so I really liked it. She's got another book that she wrote that was a memoir that I read that wasn't as compelling. And then I think she has another one after that. So she's writing a lot in her retirement from academia. And she's got an interesting voice. I listened to this as an audiobook, and yeah, it was very pleasant. And this one drew me in. And one of my plant identification fall curriculum tasks was actually identifying all the trees in the Ogham alphabet. And I did it at one point. I probably forgot now, so I need to go back and do it again. But that was pretty cool. So yeah, connecting with my Irish roots and the trees, literal roots, was pretty cool. So let me catch up on the chat again. Can this be Irish history? Yes. Okay, I didn't actually go over the prompts. So they're very inclusive. Leanne and Aoife say you just read one book in any of the prompts and you've participated. So the first one is a book with green on the cover, and that doesn't have to be Irish. So funnily enough, all of my pile of possibilities have no green. So that's interesting. And then the other prompts are Irish authors who, right? So you've got Irish authors with a 2026 book coming out, but it can be their backlist. Irish authors with a title that starts with any of the letters in Ireland, which was surprisingly hard for me to find. Irish authors' books with a great first line, which of course is hard to know until you read it. Irish authors with books about family, and then Irish authored book on audio. And so I've got something for all of those, but it was sort of a weird thing. So as far as I understand it, and Aoife or Leanne can correct me in the comments, but I think they want to have anyone join in and learn about the readathon and learn about Irish books by saying anything green on the cover. And then it's like, if you're going to dive a little deeper, look at this prompt or that prompt for any book by an Irish author. So that's the point. But yeah, history definitely counts. Catpaw says, I recently finished Thanks for the Memories by Cecilia Ahern. I've got the Marble Collector next. The one I wrecked, Margaret, is A Place Called Here. Yes. And you'll see it in just a moment. The Marble Collector was enjoyable. Oh, so Jim's got, yeah, Cecilia Ahern. And Garrett says, I wondered what Hamnet was. Yeah. It's getting, I think, a little mixed up with Wuthering Heights because they're both historical things that are released around the same time. Don't make that mistake. Wuthering Heights, not a romance and not particularly true to the material, I think, in the movie. So that's my biased view. Okay, the next category is the top recommendations unavailable. And, try another outlet to find them. You might find them in a used bookstore near you, or, you could always look on eBay, which is sort of cheating a little, but that's fun. And on this list, I have Irish Hunger, which is a series of essays. So this is nonfiction, edited by Tom Hayden. Tom Hayden, I did not know he was famous. He is one of the people who were sued, and he's got like a 1970s or 1980s. He's got lots of books about like social justice and standing up and being harassed for civil rights stuff. He's also married to someone famous. So anyway, for no reason had I heard of him until I just picked up this book in a used bookstore. That's why they're so great. And there are numerous Irish American uh, tales of like, here's what I learned about this historical period, and this is what my family told me about this, and these are the historical causes of this migration pattern, and this historical struggle is related to this historical struggle, and just like really fantastic, uh, rigorous nonfiction essays. So that's a great book. Irish Journal. This is one by Heinrich Böll. This is a German writer who wrote this in like early 1950s. It's a travelogue, but it's about his time in Ireland. And you think it's recent past the 1950s, but post-war England and Ireland were both really struggling. And so you get his unvarnished views over on the ferry and seeing people, and his take on the hospitality, which was fantastic, and the Germans' perspective on the Irish culture. And you think they're very separate. So his appreciation of it was just heartwarming. So that was really, really neat to read. And sort of his perspective, his take at that time is just so wild to imagine. Yeah. So it was just an interesting historical thing. Moment, I should say, of his writing. And I do have previous videos about the Irish Readathon. So this one has Irish Hunger and Irish, what is it called? Journal. So I go into a bit more detail. And so if you're interested, you can check up on that. I've just dropped it in the chat. And then the last one is an audiobook that I listened to through Libro.fm, and it's called A Crock of Gold by James Stevens. Now, Shannon, my friend over at ST Houston, she read The Crock of Gold and did not get into it. It's funny because she writes about leprechauns in her first trilogy, but this version of the little people and the troublemakers and the mischief makers did not jive with her vision, I think. But The Crock of Gold is, I think I would call it magical realism, but also like fantasy fairy tale, right? So it's got this wild tone where you're sort of taken into this person who all these things happen to, and he falls into this and falls into that, and you're like, is that real? And you're like, okay, it's not real, but I'm going to keep going with this because it's just a fantastic tale, tall tale. People do crazy things, and he's like, what is going on? And so you're kind of like this everyman who's going into these crazy situations and witnessing things that are in the folklore of the the culture. And I think this was also a March of the Moderns read. So it was from 1900 to 1940-ish. And so it is a classic in that sense. So you have to slow down a little. You have to sort of chew on the words a little bit more. So it's a bit more challenging of a read. But I really enjoyed it once I sort of let go of the what's actually happening and just sort of cruised along with the fantasy of it all, which was neat. Hi, Eloise. Hello, hello. Oh, and I thought the narrator did a great job. So that's why I'm recommending the Libro.fm version of The Crock of Gold, which is a fun one. Jim says, for the Irish Famine, Under the Hawthorn Tree by Marita Conlon McKenna is a great middle grade book. I read it last summer. I have that on ebook, Kindle, I think. It's on my possibilities as a family book, the family prompt, for sure. Julie says, Tom Hayden was a rock star, activist, author, married to Jane Fonda. He was incredibly intelligent. Okay, there you go. And it's like the something 8, or the people who were in a lawsuit, like the Chicago 8 or something like that. That's what I can't remember. All right, so that's the link to the video where I talk more in depth about those books. And Eloise says, oh, we got a second mention of Angela's Ashes. Oof, yeah. Heavy but good. I mean, really about family. Yeah. Good one. All right, so available, unavailable, and recs and recommenders. Oh, and here's a fun thing. Okay, so I thought I would share this little piece just quickly, not going into detail because I haven't read these, right? But this is my Storygraph tab of Irish Readathon, which you can see if I zoom in here a little bit. So I made it public so you can check it out. But this is like books, Lisa in Bookland. She's a wonderful Irish booktuber. I don't think she's posted much lately, but I miss her. She was really fun to do a buddy read with. Parnell, like some good Sirens is about some Irish history. I read that last year. There we go. There's Under the Hawthorn Tree. Aoife was the first one to recommend that. Sean the Book Maniacs. This is how I tag all my books before my actual heartbreak. So that was Sadie Reads Again. She doesn't post anymore either. The Lonely Sea and Sky. That's Elisa Rec. Ritual of Reading, who's still on and making great podcasts. It's a Maeve Binchy recommendation. Across the Divide, another Lisa recommendation. This is on my TBR from Aoife, and this is where I got it. So I got it at Sauchy Hall Street. Tree Dogs is one I read. The Rachel Incident I read. There's Cat Paw. There we go. Fun to see your name in lights, right? Irish Girls About Town is another Cat Paw recommendation. Full Tilt is a nonfiction that I read. A River in the Trees. I don't have that assigned to anybody. Sandy at Miss Reads a Lot was the one who recommended that. Strumpet City, interesting. Mother Ireland, there's a famous Irish author. Burning the Big House, that sounds really good. A Graham Norton book, which I got from the library but did not end up reading. Good Behavior, which I had and I ended up giving away because I had it too long. The Last September, which is a classic. Elaine Howland is another Irish booktuber who recommended this one, and it's on my list. Precious Catastrophe, which is an Aoife recommendation, which looks really fun. If you see that like witchy vibe, that looks like a really fun one. There's the book that I can't get, 32 Words for Field. The Frank O'Connor book, Riders to the Sea, which is a play that was pretty confusing. The Hungry Road, which is another Marita Conlon McKenna book, which I do have on ebook. Maybe I have both of them. There's the Libro.fm cover, Crock of Gold. Translations, it's another play. Drama in Muslin, which I believe is a Victober book by George Moore right there. There's Irish Hunger. There's that cover for the Tom Hayden book. Yeah. I read that as a research read, actually, because it spurred a lot of great ideas. So, hint, hint. The Hungry Earth, Ghost in the Throat, Guests of the Nation, which is covered in the Frank O'Connor book. The Tainted, which I mentioned. The Sunken Road. A Crack in Everything. It's another Aoife recommendation. The Good People. Star by Star. And After the Lockout. So yeah, so look, that's a labor one, right? So right up my alley. So yeah, so if you're interested and you want to learn more about those books, I do have them on Storygraph. Just search on Storygraph for me for Irish Readathon, and it'll be a public tag there if you're curious. And And thanks to all those recommenders, because over the years I have amassed great recommendations from you guys. So I'm just passing it on by recommending more right back at you. All right, so my TBR, let's see. Possibilities. Here we go. I'm going to show the ones that you already saw. Trespasses, Louise Kennedy. So this came out a couple years ago, made a big splash. It's the winner of the On Post Irish Book Awards Novel of the Year 2022. There is nothing special about the day Cushla meets Michael, a married Protestant from Belfast, in the pub owned by her family. But here in 1970s Ireland, love is never far from violence, and this encounter will change both of their lives forever. It's a Bloomsbury book. Women's Prize shortlist. So yeah, like lots of acclaim, and I finally got it when I went on my last trip. So that's exciting. I may read that one. Maggie O'Farrell book. This is from her backlist. It's called The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox. And this has to do with asylums. Someone says, think Kate Chopin's The Awakening, Charlotte Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper, or Jean Rhys's Wide Sargasso Sea, a breathtaking, heartbreaking creation. Esme Lennox is a dreamy child, an odd, bookish young woman, the kind of girl who stares and listens and won't flirt with boys at dances. And then, in the space of a moment, Esme Lennox is gone. And then she reappears after she's released from a hospital after 61 years at the hospital. So, like, crazy family story, right? So that looks like an interesting one. But I haven't read it. I've had it for a while. This one on my list is a classic, Elizabeth Bowen, the March of the Moderns author. It's been turned into a movie, which is why you have a movie tie-in on the cover. And it's called The Last September. Elizabeth Bowen's timeless portrait of a young woman's coming of age in a brutalized time and place, where the ordinariness of life floats like music over the impending doom of history. In 1920, at their country home in County Cork, Sir Richard Naylor and his wife, Lady Myra, and their friends maintain a skeptical attitude towards the events going on around them. But behind the facade of tennis parties and army camp dances, all know that the end is approaching, the end of British rule in the south of Ireland, and with it, the demise of a way of life that had survived for centuries. So yeah, class conflict as well as the struggle for independence and the loyalties. I'm very excited about that one. I just haven't managed to read it yet. Let's see. This is one I picked up recently. This is an author I don't know about, but the cover was really pretty and it seemed cool. The Queen of Dirt Island on a used bookstore. Who do I pick out? A generous mosaic of a novel about the staying power of love and pride and history and family. So this would work for the family prompt. Yeah, I don't know much about it. I just liked the cover, and it was a modern novel, and it was Irish, and I thought, sold. So we'll see. Then we've got the two books by the author that I haven't read yet. It is Jess Kidd. Now, I've heard lots of good things about Jess Kidd. The quirky vibe, the sort of night circus kind of like strange but intriguing vibe is what I got from the people who reviewed it. And I was like, that sounds really cool. And so I picked up both of these books. And then I was going to pick up a third. And I was like, wait, I don't know if I like Jess Kidd yet. This is just based on recommendations. So I need to read one of these this year for sure. Mr. Flood's Last Resort is less known. Maud Drennan is a dedicated caregiver whose tragic past has left her haunted by a chorus of prattling saints that only she can see. Okay, so we've got like supernatural. She finds solace in her work and humble existence until she meets the cantankerous Cahal Flood. And I actually have a third cousin called Cahal, a combative widower who lives in a gothic mansion crawling with feral cats. Mr. Flood doesn't exactly roll out the red carpet, but Maud is his last chance of defying his son's sinister efforts to ship him off to an old age home. So an alliance slowly forms. I mean, that sounds fun, right? So that's on the docket. Or Things in Jars, which I think had more of a publishing splash. There are 1,000 Hold on. Enjoy the cover. While I take a gasp of tea. There are 1,000 places to hide a child in London, even a remarkable child. And if she is remarkable, there are 1,000 buyers waiting. Okay, well that seems a little dark, given our Epstein files era, but things in jars. London 1863. So yeah, kidnapping, anatomists, London, Victorian detective novel. I mean, maybe that'll fly by. It did well with the reviews, so who knows? All right, then we've got this. Okay, if you guys don't know what this is, allow me to educate you. This is a, what would I call it? I'm going to call it a create space book. Okay, so this is stuff that you can get from the public record, right? This is like a Project Gutenberg book. It's obviously an old, you can see it's typeset. There's like runs of ink and little mistakes and everything, and there's big margins, right? So this means it was just scanned in as a public access book because there's no copyright on it anymore. It's from 1798. So someone took this and printed it out on CreateSpace so they could actually read it on paper, which is fine, and then it was sold. So it's weird. It's a public access book that is printed and then sold and resold. So anyway, I picked this up. It's called The Personal Narrative of the Irish Rebellion of 1798 by Charles Hamilton Teeling. And since this is like a big part of the backstory of my current trilogy, I've been wanting to read this. And it's like primary source material. It is actually, what was an affidavit in those times, someone setting down their own recollection of what happened during the 1798 rebellion. It is not my present intention to enter into a minute detail of the rise and progress of the United Irish Societies. That's the beginning. And I know about the United Irish Societies from my research. So, like, very tempting. It's just not appealing to read because of the format. So I may read this and roll it into my research reads because I'm editing right now and could use it for some detail. I mean, I'm doing it 30 years later, but that's part of the backstory. So maybe names, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. We have 2 weeks until March starts. And then here's the thing. I would love to buddy read this book. It's by an American, not an Irish person, but it's also like a history book. It's called The Year of the French. It's about the 1798 rebellion because the French were supposed to sail in and save them. And they didn't. So it's like about intrigue and allies and alliances and traitors and spies and code words and societies. And like, I think it'll be really good, but really dense. I started reading it on my own and I was like so lost with the vernacular that they were using. I think the American author did a really good job researching, but it was like hard to make my way through. So if I could find someone else who wants to read this, I will mail them one of these copies. Your pick. I picked one up just like a couple months ago. And I was like, maybe this will get me to read it. So far it has not. But I'm really interested about this year in history and what they chose to highlight. So if anyone has a hankering to learn about the rebellion, the year was 1798 when a band of determined romantic Irishmen rose up in County Mayo against their English rulers and were joined in their heroic dream by the troops of revolutionary France. The arrival in Kilcummin Bay of the French was the signal for that war of liberation to begin. Blah, blah, blah. Thomas Flanagan, the author. So again, let me know if you have it, if you want to read it, if I can send it to you somewhere in the world. That would be fun. Hello, family and books. Boop the like button. Much appreciated. And Constance, hello, hello. Erin, hello. Just Kid's first book himself was great. Yeah, that's listed on one of the covers. Yeah, it's a very Irish term, right? Himself. Because it's not used as a reflexive pronoun. It's actually used as I don't know. It's a curious usage. I'm not sure how to frame it. Maybe Derek would know what the words are for that, because that gets into linguistics and dialect, and I'm out of practice on that. Okay. So all that, we have my recommendations, we have my all the books that I've tagged that I have yet to read, and we have my pile of possibilities. So the last thing, let me drop that link, my tag, the link for the public tag, in case you're curious about all those books and who recommended them to me. So the last two parts here are, there's one other cool readathon in, oh, wait. Okay. So you noticed none of these books have green on them. Did you notice that? None of them have green on them. So I've got Trespasses by Louise Kennedy. She has a 2026 book, so that works. The Great First Line, I'm hoping one of the Jess Kidd books works for that. About Family, The Vanishing Act of Esme Lennox, because her family locked her up in an asylum. And the audio is a book called The House of Ashes, which I looked and I found has an Irish author. The other books, The Last September, Hungry Road, and then this one. It's kind of a sickly green. Are we going to call that green? It's like, it's a really ugly color. But I found this book and I thought, A Radical Priest in Mayo. That could be interesting. I've read pieces of it here and there, but it's really like 1850s and after. So it's too late for my research. But it could be interesting. So anyway, that's like maybe a free radical, if you will. The other readathon in March is a new one called March on the Rails. And I happen to have a book called Railway by George Revel. And it's part of a kind of a famous series. And it's got lots of pictures and paintings, and it's about like the culture and, the invention and history of railways starting in Europe, and how they started. I've read, look at that, The Railway Dragon. I've read another book about George Stephenson and one of the first engines, because that was concerned with my previous trilogy. So I've read a little bit about railways and trains, but this would be quite a deep dive. And I got it before I knew about the readathon. I just got it because I thought it would be interesting. Too many books, Margaret. Oh, and one of the books that I have, it's not really a recommendation. I really like it. It's one of these like coffee table books called Irish Cottages. There's a good amount of text as well as, multiple photographs. And it's talking about the construction, the style, the materials in different locales, and lots of different observations about how they used to be constructed, the way of life in a cottage. And I use this for Scottish research, actually, because it's pretty similar with the button bend and the similar weather. So I'm revisiting this to get inspired to do my edits, because I need a lot of fuel for inspiration, because I have had trouble. I'm not going to say having. So this has been helping in the past few days, and that's related. So I'll share that. Railway, buddy read, current reads, and upcoming events. Okay, so current reads, you can all share your current read as well. And then I'll do upcoming events, open that for everyone to pop in if you have something coming up. And that'll be us. Okay. The Year of the French is the first in a trilogy. Just looked it up. Okay. It may be, but I don't. Does it need to be read in full? If it does, that might decide me in a different direction. Summer 1799. It has an epilogue. Kilala. I think it'll be okay to read standalone. Usually first books of a trilogy don't end on a cliffhanger. I mean, young adult fantasy does, but I don't think like 1970s big historical fiction guy is going to end on a cliffhanger. Do you? If I get through this and it ends on a cliffhanger, I'm going to be angry. Okay, thank you for pointing that out. I'm going to go in with eyes open. Kappa. Constance says on Vera, British TV, Vera often asked, how did they seem within themselves? I'd never heard that phrase before, but I like it. Interesting. Yeah, she's sort of like a psychologist investigator, kind of like Maisie Dobbs. Yeah. Oh, that picture is exactly what your ancestral Irish cottage looked like. Oh, okay. This mom. Hi, Mom. Yeah, well, there's a lot. Are you talking about the front here? I don't know that it was painted. I don't think theirs was painted. But yeah, there's just like really good vernacular examples. So it's good inspiration, we'll say. Mike, I'm currently reading Moody by Sol Plaatje, the first novel by a Black South African for my Read the Beloved Country series. Awesome. I don't know that title. So it's probably on one of your recent videos. So excellent. Catpaw says, on railways, I can recommend Full Steam Ahead by Ruth Goodman. Ruth Goodman, the historian, and Peter Ginn. Ginn? Also available as a series on DVD or on YouTube. Oh, fun. Okay, so we've got a YouTube option. I don't know if that will satisfy Alan and Greg on the railway crew, but if you're interested, that will always be a fun one. That's good. My current reads, besides this one, while I'm editing, are really good. I'm plowing through at a good clip. Africa is Not a Country, Notes on a Bright Continent by Dipo Faluyin. And so far, I've got an extensive rant about boundaries and borders and how they were formed, an introduction to Nigerian culture, and I'm like 6 out of 8 ways through the forms of government and how they came about. He says there's 8 different ways. And so I'm working my way through that section, which is interesting because I'm learning about some government coups and administrations that I did know about, but most that I did not know the details of. So that's really cool. And I love the cover. I got this recently. It's a recency bias. I admit I'm not reading what I own. I'm reading what I just bought. And then this one is also a just bought. It's called Hospicing Modernity. This was a recommendation from the Planet Critical podcast with Rachel Donald, which is a climate change podcast. And she talked about this book. The subtitle is Facing Humanity's Wrongs and the Implications for Social Activism. And it's really fantastic. I'm almost halfway through. She's an education specialist from Brazil who observed in her development contexts of putting educational programs together, people didn't question the methodologies, they didn't question the epistemologies, and they didn't question the ontologies. So in this book, she's like, there are different ways to do things. There are different ways to be in the world. We should examine these and have a free choice rather than have groupthink. And keep going the way we're going. And that really spoke to me. So so it's really good. And I've done some of the exercises in here, including a big collage party that I did for myself on Saturday night with some of the statements to sit with and think about. So really, really good. It's psychology, it's development, it's economics, it's education. And it's almost self-help because you need to really de-educate yourself about some of these things before you can see things in a different light, instead of like the way you're always used to seeing things. So really, really good. Hospicing Modernity. I'll be excited to review that when I finish. And I started reading K.N. Robertson's Lesser Demons. K.N. Robertson is going to be the 3rd guest on the fantasy panel. And so events coming up, Black Author Tubers, Mojo and Devin Gambrell Clark and K.N. Robertson will be on my channel Monday to talk about their fantasy books. And I'll get to interview them about Black fantasy, modern fantasy, favorite subgenres, etc. So that will be very fun on Monday. Let's see. Okay, so Kappa says Ruth Goodman, good for beginners and history readers like me. Yes. Elaine says currently reading The Late Great Planet Earth from the 1970s. Bible prophecy because we still hear. Huh. It sounds like it was one of those books that was prophesying doom, which didn't come about. And so, yeah. Why would you read that book then? Just curious. Kira says, I've got the book, Africa is Not a Country. Haven't got to it yet. Really? That's so cool. I'm not sure why. I know why. I picked this up because of the bookstore that I walked into, and it just spoke to me in the moment. I actually didn't get a booktuber recommend for that one, which is rare. So yeah, I wonder where you picked it up. It's a good book. It's recommended, and yeah, good topic. Upcoming events. Last little piece for today. I don't have the link yet. I just did the thumbnail and I need to make the event and send it out to the folks and make sure everything's kosher so that they're okay with all the details. But I'm very excited about this. So we will have this panel and then wrap up. So if you've read any books for the Black Author Tuber Readathon, then you're invited to come on my channel on March 2nd, which is the first Monday in March, I believe. And we'll talk about the books we read and the channels we watched and new people we found, and just basically celebrating Black Author Tubers to wrap up our month of celebrating Black Author Tubers. So hopefully that'll be a fun experience for everyone, and I'll get some people on because that's the hope. All right, so catching up here to wrap up. Mike says, me too. Africa is Not a Country. Got it, but not read yet. Okay, well, when I read it, when I finish it and I review it, maybe you guys can buddy read. You never know. I mean, you're probably booked until next year, but you know. We've got a Dissident Knight saying hello. Elaine says, I'm reading it because I am curious. Good to know what people were believing. Fair enough. Yeah. Yes, I need a link for my subs. Yeah, I will do this after this live stream. I promise. It's been on my list. Oh boy. Okay. So hopefully that will get on your calendars and the link, it will be in your feed, so it'll be easy to access. And that's it for us today. So that was my little peek into next month of March's readathons. But for Friday and Monday, I will go back to Black Author Tuber Readathon and fantabulous Black History Month books. So hopefully you're having a good month of reading and will join us for one of these celebrations. Not doom and gloom. Oh, okay. So interesting. I have no idea where it was supposed to go then. Maybe the rapture. Anyway, thank you guys for watching today. And I am here Wednesdays and Fridays, usually at 10 a.m. Pacific. We've added some Mondays on for scheduling sake for the readathon, but we'll get back to Wednesdays and Fridays in the rest of March. So looking forward to Irish Readathon. And if you've got recommendations, feel free to drop them in the comments, or tell me, please, if you want to read Year of the French with me. Please help. All right, that is it for me today. Thank you for being part of this reading community. I appreciate you, and I will see you again soon. Take care and happy reading.